Hey everybody, I'm here to talk about Crime of the Ancient Marinara by Stephanie Cole. See that amazing skeleton. My aunt actually sent me this book because I always send her photographs when I'm in Barnes & Noble of like the worst, best food-related murder mystery pun that I can find on the covers of the books in the cozy mystery section. So she sent me this in the mail a little while ago, and I should preface this whole review with the fact that I'm not very well versed in the mystery genre at all. And so, like, a shocking plot to me probably would not be a shocking plot to somebody that reads mysteries often. This is only the sixth or seventh, depending on how you look at it, mystery that I've ever read. And most of the mysteries I've read have been weird, cozy mysteries with pun related food names. The first one I read was called The Quiche of Death, and then I read another one also with the quiche pun, but a different author, called The Long Quiche Goodbye. And I also read More Work for the Undertaker, which was actually amazing. I very much recommend that. And The Missing Hydrangeas, which was awful. and and then that Agatha Christie book that I don't even remember the name of it. I reviewed it on this channel, and I didn't really like it that much. And then I don't think My Sister the Serial Killer counts as a mystery, so I guess that doesn't count. So the point is, I haven't read that many. But so I guess I'll just explain the plot and then spoil what happens and tell you how I react to that, and then I'll talk a little bit about the writing. So the plot, there's this American woman named Nell, and she takes on a job in Italy, and she is supposed to like design a cooking school where like rich Americans come and learn from this sort of washed up has been master chef. And the master chef used to have this famous secret recipe for the world's greatest marinara sauce, which is why the name is Crime of the Ancient Marinara. So she's running this cooking school. It's actually the second book in the series, which I didn't realize when I started reading it, but it doesn't really matter. So there's like a little rapport with her and the family that she's designing the school with and for. So she lives on their little Italian Tuscan campus, and she's designing the school. So that the book starts, and it's the first crop of 5 Americans that are coming to take this weekend-long cooking course, and they're supposed to learn the secret recipe for the marinara along with some other marinara recipes and cooking instruction. And the Americans get there, you get to know some of their personalities. A murder happens. The guy who's everyone hates the most gets murdered. And it takes a long time for him to get murdered. It's like halfway through the book almost when the murder finally happens. And like I said, I haven't read a lot of mysteries, but I do watch a lot of Murder, She Wrote. And in Murder, She Wrote, there's a lot of episodes where like half the mystery is trying to figure out who's going to get murdered, and then the other half of the mystery is figuring out who did the murder. And I always liked those episodes, so I liked that. I liked trying to guess who was going to get murdered, but it was sort of obvious it was going to be him. And so our main character Nell, she's sort of the one who ultimately solves the murder. And spoiler, the person who kills our murdered victim is... So I didn't expect the person that it was, but that's because they weren't that big of a part of the story. So I thought it was kind of... I didn't like the person who was the killer, because it felt like I really got to know these 5 American characters and then the Italian family and the nuns that live on this campus and work together, and we got to know them really deeply, and she does an amazing job with character building. So you really got to know all the different characters. There was a lot of possible motives for this murder, and then the person who ends up doing it was somebody that we met for like 5 seconds at the beginning of the book. And that bothered me, because it was like, okay, I didn't see it coming, but that's because it doesn't make any sense. It's like all this stuff that happens off scene, outside the purview of the book, that was the motivation for this murder. So that kind of bothered me, because I thought it would have been a lot more fun if the murder had been done by one of the people that we actually get to know. That being said, this book was surprisingly pretty great, or at least I really enjoyed reading this. Also, Stephanie Cole can really write well. I will share with you some passages of her writing, and at first when I came across some of the passages that were just really beautifully written, I was impressed, but it almost felt like it was just a flex for the sake of it, or almost like, just to show that, like, I'm a good writer, but then as the book went on, it just became, like, more well incorporated, and then I really got to see her character development, too, and that was outstanding. So I'll just share with you some of my favorite passages. I'll share some of the first ones I caught. First, outside the night was so still I could hear the chirr of the night jars, the tentative bark of a neighbor's dog. That was the first one I starred. Just like early on in the book. The next one. But here in Italy, there was still a sense that ramshackle was something that had outlived bombardments and sieges and abandonments and centuries of the changing purposes of fickle humans. I was just like, centuries of the changing purposes of fickle humans? I wasn't expecting it in this book, and I was a little blown away. I strolled restlessly to the window, where I caught soft blue and vermilion streaks as the day headed toward sunset. Just pretty. And that's one of the things that she does such a good job of, is the world building. So that's what I like about the few cozy mysteries that I've read. When the author does it well, is like they really put you in this cozy, nice place that you want to be in, but also there's murder happening. Okay, and then this passage doesn't have to do with the writing so much as I just found it so relatable, and it built her character so well. So she's an American living in Italy. Everyone around her, aside from the students that are there, they're all Italian, and she fits in pretty well. She seems to really like the culture and the vibe there. But there's a line here about missing just like capitalist crap junk food that I found immediately so relatable, because when I went to Italy when I got married for my honeymoon. When me and my partner came back to the United States, the first thing we did was buy like a giant Dunkin' Donuts iced coffee with a bunch of crap flavor in it, because as an American you just become used to and somewhat fond of like corporate packaged over-processed food. And this just happened to a friend of mine too, who came back from Senegal and immediately opened a Red Bull like upon landing in the United States. And so in their villa, she gets like a fresh made coffee and like fresh baked goods every single day. It's just like part of the breakfast there. But so there's this line. There are days I just want to hear the pop of the Keurig pod. Days when I just want to rip at the cellophane wrapper encasing a bakery item that hasn't seen the inside of an oven since who knows when. And I just felt like I connected with her character in that tiny, weird American moment. And it established that she's sort of feeling, kind of homesick or lonely, but without beating you over the head with it or making it really dramatic. So I loved that. Another line. Okay, so after the murder happens, the guy who gets murdered, he's poisoned. He thinks it's stomach issues at first. He's gluten intolerant. But then it turns out to be poison. And she's sort of realizing that at first they didn't ask for help because they just thought it was like regular stomach issues. I felt myself sag right where I stood, swamped by the sad realization that it must have looked like something familiar, something they could handle, until it didn't. That also made me sad. And I guess I really undersold this book, or I feel like kind of a jerk that I'm even saying this, but I didn't expect it to feel sad while reading this book. But I did. It kind of got me. And I didn't even like the guy who died. I was like, I would have been also one of the suspects because he was a jerk. Okay, so then it talks about his widow. So the guy who's murdered leaves behind a wife. They were having issues, but like she didn't want him to die. And it talks about soon after he's killed, I think it's like 2 days later, she's brushing her teeth. She brushed her teeth as though it was an unfamiliar task. Again, I just feel like she does such a good job of showing, not telling. Like, at no point is she like, she's sad, or she's in disbelief, or she seems like she's in shock, or I feel like she isn't processing, or she's still processing, or I can't tell. She doesn't say any of that. She just shows you by her actions that she's like having this sort of out-of-body experience still with the fact that her husband has been killed. So that was really cool. And then, I really like this part. She has a phone conversation with her dad. It's like the only interaction between these two people. So her dad's not even a character in the book. He literally only comes up once. And it's to advance the plot. It's for a specific reason they have this phone conversation. But in their phone conversation, you totally get a sense of their relationship, of the kind of dad he was. He's kind of like a dorky, tries to be cool, but is out of touch, in kind of a cute and endearing, but laughable way. So he calls his daughter Little Red Corvette, but he doesn't realize that that's a Prince song and that it's about sex. So he says this, I'll just read it to you. He says, "Hey, Little Red Corvette." So who's in that kind of mood? My Corvette nickname came out when, believe it or not, Dr. Val Valenti believed he was showing the kind of cultural sensitivity that steered him to safe ground in the split second before calling me Sugar Pie Honey Bunch. I knew how his mind worked. Cute car, convertible, red, vroom vroom. I mean, how did the Gidgets and the Moondoggies get to the beach for spring break, right? Dad, I said in my best non-judgmental voice, you know that song is about casual sex, don't you? A tiny sputter. No, it isn't, Nell. And then Nell says, "Girl, you got a ass like I've never seen?" He was aghast. "That?" he squeaked. "From the Beach Boys?" Prince. In the 4,000-mile space between us, I knew he wasn't entirely sure who Prince was. And then it just moves on. But just that little moment, it made me laugh. Her realizing that he doesn't know who Prince is, and him just being embarrassed. Let's see. Okay, so that's sort of it for the writing that I really liked. The other thing that stuck out to me that I wanted to mention is, and it didn't really bother me about this book, but it bothers me generally, which is that sometimes when there's a character that's coded as bad, right? A bad guy. They're often rich. This guy was very rich. Very rich, bad guy. But sometimes when an author or a director, or an artist, whatever, is trying to portray wealth, I feel like the line between, are you making fun of them because they're rich, or are you making fun of them because it's a man who's doing something feminine? And those lines like cross sometimes, and it makes me a little uncomfortable sometimes. And I think part of it is like harkening back to like, French aristocracy or the Rococo period, or that very like royal, unbelievable wealth, silly hats, silly hair, lots of like that powdery makeup that gets over onto everything, lots of blush. And so I think that's like the intent of like these different creators when they're doing this. But they in this book, this guy, they keep talking about how his hands are manicured over and over again, and it's supposed to make you as the reader feel like that he's rich and detestable and vain and only cares about himself. But it's kind of an issue for me because men should be allowed to get their hands manicured, and it shouldn't be like a bad thing, or it shouldn't mean that they're egotistical or that that they're bad. So I that kind of stuck out to me. Like, there was a couple points in this book where I wrote down and I was like, is it anti-rich or is it anti-gay? Now he's not a gay character, but anti-femme, I guess. So that was there. Thing I was thinking about. And the last thing I'll say about this book, because I don't have really anything else to say. Oh, two things. Okay, I have two more things to say. One is that even though I didn't care and I was disappointed in who the killer was, the way that Nell caught the killer was pretty great. She like tricks her into going into the wine cellar and then tricks her into going behind like the locked expensive gate and then locks the door on her. And the woman is like the wine, I don't remember the word. She owns like a vineyard. So a lot of the wine that's in that wine cellar is hers. But she didn't realize that all of the wine that our main character left in that area was her own wine, and it was her most expensive wine. And she gets super angry that she gets locked in the wine cellar, so she starts smashing the wine bottles. But all the wine bottles that she smashed were her own. It doesn't actually sound that good when I say it out loud. But when you actually read it, it's like there's like a viciousness to the exchange that I really liked. And I thought that was kind of impressive because I really didn't care about the killer at all. I was like annoyed by the killer. So to be interested in her getting caught was kind of unexpected. Okay, all that being said, I enjoyed reading this book. It's probably the best of cozy mysteries that I've read. No, it's definitely the best of cozy mysteries that I've read. Its biggest problem is that the love interest sucks. There's a love triangle. She has like the safe, boring guy who's part of the Italian family, who I guess she had a fling with in book one. She must have. He must be like a continuing love interest throughout all the books. There was nothing about him other than just like nice, accommodating, and helpful to the main character. That was it. There was nothing about he's so boring. Meanwhile, this other guy comes in and he's like the secret spy master chef. This guy George. She thinks he's a spy for a while, coming from her dad, but he's not. Anyway, she has a thing with him, and their chemistry was amazing. Like, really, really good chemistry. He made me laugh. Like, I was really believing the whole thing. And she didn't end up with him. She ends up with the idiot from the family that she's staying with. So that bothered me. But I think that's, like, the formula a little bit for these books is, like, they stay with the safe man book after book after book. And then probably with each book there's an alternative presented and they don't choose the alternative. But it would be pretty cool if a book just switched it up and had the main character just ditch a recurring love interest character. Anyway, yeah, don't read it for the love story, it's bad. I think that's all I had to say. I was entertained reading this. But it is, I mean, it's still what it is. It's a pun. It's a pun, food-related cozy mystery with a recipe at the back. But it was a good one. Okay.